All right, hello everybody. Hold on, let me try to. Why? Let's put this full screen so that you can see better. All right, sorry about that. Hi everybody. We're just going to go ahead and get started. I know a few people reached out saying that they were going to join pretty soon, but hopefully they won't be too long. But I don't want to hold everybody up. All right, so what I want to talk about first is what this class is going to be. This is not going to be a creative um, or teach you the creative side of Photoshop or how to create your own original content and stuff like that. Uh, I don't feel like that would do anybody good because I'm not very good at it myself. What this is meant to be is kind of like a replacement for either if you use Silhouette Studio or Creative Studio, um, how to import your images and then bring them into the Sawgrass print manager. And then that way you can have more control over what you are doing, and you'll end up having better results in the long run. And then as you get more comfortable with that, then you can start experimenting around with some of the other creative uh, aspects of Photoshop. And I will show you a few of these things where how to overlay patterns and really basic stuff that most people want when they do Photoshop. All right, so the first thing that I want to get into is how do you even get Photoshop, or what is Photoshop? So Photoshop is made by the company Adobe, and it used to be a $700 program, and obviously that was out of the reach of a lot of people. When I started, it was a $700 program that I managed to procure a license from my school, so I got lucky that way. But not everybody had that, so Adobe went with this route of something called the Creative Cloud, which is a subscription service. And I know everybody's kind of sick of subscription services and stuff like that, but I feel like Adobe offers a good product. If you don't want to go the subscription model, there's Affinity makes a really good photo editor. Um, and they're like if you catch them on sale, it's like $40. But I don't, I mean, I like Affinity, but it's not as powerful as Adobe. It doesn't have all the tools that I want out of a video editor. So if you go to adobe.com, adobe.com, you're going to come to here. And if you click on this creative and design, you'll see Photoshop. And then some people will use Illustrator. For the most things that I do for sublimation, I'm going to be using Photoshop. And the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator is that Photoshop is a raster editor, meaning that you individually control all the little pixels. So, um, yeah, I try to make it more simple than that, but I can show you when we actually get into Photoshop. Illustrator, and if you can see down here, it's a vector graphics and illustration. That's where you see like SVGs and AI files. Those are all vector graphics, and it's literally taking a line, or it's math-based art, versus Photoshop is this dot is red, this dot is green, this dot is red, and so forth and so on. Illustrator looks at an image and says this line and this line are this long, and we're going to make it this color, and it's all mathematically computated, which is why SVGs can be as big as you want them or as small as you want them, because it's all mathematical based. But it requires the more colors and details that are on an SVG, the more computational power your computer needs. And so that's why you only see SVG files as they don't have very much detail to them, because the the amount of computational power needed to do something that's like your typical Tumblr file, it would be astronomical, and most computers would freeze. So that's why you would use Photoshop over Illustrator. If you start getting into designing your own graphics, then Illustrator is the way to go for the most part. But anyways, so if you go into here and you go into Photoshop, And you see right here, there is $20 or $21 a month. And that's in the US. I know all over the world it changes, but that is usually the going rate for Photoshop. And I will tell you, do not pay this price. There's a much better way of doing this. That is the first mistake that a lot of people see, is that they see this, oh, I need Photoshop, I'm just going to get this one. Do not do that. If you come here to creative design and you click on photographers, there's a couple ways to do this. So now you can get Photoshop and Lightroom, which if you do any kind of photography, Lightroom is going to be great, but it's $10 a month. And the only real difference between this $10 a month and the $20 a month is like 100 gigabytes of cloud storage. But I don't suggest anybody use that anyways, because that's a really paltry amount. So just take this for the $10 a month. And if you never use Lightroom, then oh well. There is another way to do it. If you have somebody who's a student, you can, you can come over here to the student teachers. And for $20 a month, you can get every program that Adobe makes. So if you ever wanted to, venture out and do other things, you can get that. But just starting out, I probably would just do the $10 a month package. So after you buy this, what you're actually going to install is Creative Cloud. And Creative Cloud, when you install it, looks like this. And yes, I am on a Mac, I will say that, but everything that I'm telling you is going to be universal between Mac and Windows. So don't worry that, what he's telling me is not going to be relevant to me. It's all relevant. If I tell you any hotkeys, which Photoshop is nothing but hotkeys, I will tell you either Command or Control for Windows. So I will make that clear. Sorry, I have a little stitch in my throat today. So, all right. Anyways, so you'll come into here and you'll see, if you go to your all apps, it will show it right down here. And when you first install this, or when you first install Creative Cloud, Photoshop will not be on here. You'll have to go over here and click on install. I think it'll look like this. Okay. So you install it. Looks like I have an update available. I'm not going to bother updating it. That's the beauty of Photoshop, is that no matter what, because right now we're on Photoshop 2022. And every time that there's a new iteration, you will automatically get that as part of your subscription. So you will always have the most up-to-date version of Photoshop. You will never have to worry about it. Now, I know some people that are in this class say that I have Photoshop CS6, I think is the latest version before they went to Creative Cloud, which came out in 2014. If you're using that, all this will still be relevant to you, because nothing really big has changed as far as what we're going to do. I mean, you don't have some of the neural filters and things like that, but we won't be doing any of that anyway, so you'll be fine as well. But if you're just starting out, I highly suggest using Creative Cloud. And now that I beat that dead horse, I'm going to go ahead and open up Photoshop. So you'll open it either this way, or if you have your start menu or whatever, it'll all be on there as well as soon as you install it. All right, so my Photoshop has opened, and normally when you first start, you'll see this will be the first thing that pops up. This is your new document. What might pop up also is tips and tricks. Feel free to read through those if you want, but I find that those don't really tell us very much. All right, so the biggest thing, there's all these sizes and stuff like that you can design in. These are all presets. So if you go over here to print, you can see your 8.5 letter, your 8.5, your legal, all those things. So, but what you should actually do is come over here to the right and enter what you're going to be doing. So I'm just going to do the 8.5 by 11. If you have something like, you're overseas and you have A4, A4 paper is on here. So you can use those dimensions. You can toggle right over here between inches and pixels and centimeters and all that stuff. So your width, your height, your resolution, you want to keep that at 300 pixels per inch. That is the minimum suggested uh, for sublimation, and honestly, anything above that, it's not really anything. All right, now here we are, RGB, this color mode. This is where a lot of people fumble because we have a CYMK printer. People want to use CYMK color, and you don't do that. And the reason why you don't do that and you design an RGB is because Print Manager will take your image from RGB and convert it to CYMK for you. If you put in a CYMK color profile in there first, it might confuse Print Manager because Print Manager is using something called ImageMagick to process these. And there are so many CYMK profiles out there that it's hard to know which exactly one that you're using. So it kind of just guesses. Versus if you use RGB, and then down here it says working RGB, this sRGB IEC, this is standard international colors. And what I mean by standard international colors is that what a color profile, because the printer can't visually see what your image looks like. It only knows it by, the ones and zeros. So it knows that this dot is red and this dot is supposed to be yellow. Well, if I went up to somebody on the street and I said, hey, what do you think the color yellow looks like? Without ever having to look at, they'll probably give you something that will be different from what you think is yellow. So providing a color profile is like providing a color palette, and then that way you both know, like when you go to the paint shop and you get one of those color palettes, that way that color is that color, and there's no guessing about it. So that's why you use a standard sRGB, so that Print Manager doesn't have to guess at what your colors really are. All right, so got that 8-bit background color. You can leave it white because it doesn't really matter because white's not going to print. You can do transparent if you want, but I would just leave it as white. All right. And if anybody has any questions, if I'm going too fast, I didn't clarify anything, just please let me know. I will try my best to think about this as a beginner, but sometimes because I've done this so much, I just skip over things. All right. So we've got this. This orientation. So this is your portrait, and then this is your landscape portrait orientation. Geez. And you can toggle it between here, and you can see how the width and the height change. If you forget to do that, like you do this, you hit the create and you forget to do it, I'll show you how to change it back over. So let's take a little quick tour around this screen right here. So first of all, if yours doesn't look like mine, I suggest coming up here to Window, Workspace, and just click on Essentials. And if it still doesn't look like that, you can come over here and click Reset Essentials. So over here on the left is your tool pane, and these are all the nifty little tools and all this other stuff that you'll be using if you need to actually modify your photo. Okay, up here is if you need to modify any property of whatever it is that you're using. So if I hit B, which brings up the brush button, here's where I can change all my brushes and stuff like that. Over here on the right, what will normally be popped up right here is your color. Then there's your swatches and all these other different tools that you can use if you wanted to whatever you wanted to do. I also suggest coming up here in the window and turning on Navigator. That's the easy, and then it'll pop up like right over here, and you can just drag it. If you want it wherever you want it to be. I like mine up here, and just drag it and drop it into there. And then this is for me the easiest way to navigate around the artboard, your canvas, because otherwise you're over here dragging this slider and this slider. I just find it much easier to work it like that. All right, down here, here's your properties. Now, if you needed to change your canvas size, you can do it here, and then same thing with this orientation. Just note that it's not going to, if you have something in here already, so let's just say I drew this black line that's going like this, and I hit change, it's not going to automatically, like, turn everything over and, everything. It's just going to literally recreate the artboard or the canvas. So it's not going to, so make sure you are on the, what I'm trying to say is make sure that you're on the right orientation. And all right, so actually I am going to be working in this because my first graphic that I'm going to import is actually a Tumblr, because that seems to be the thing that people struggle with the most. Now there's two ways of importing an image here. My favorite way is let me close this out since we're done with that. I'll move this out of the way a little bit, and I'll have my Tumblr graphic that I want to import, and I will just drag it and drop in there. And I'm getting an error for some reason. Let me try a different graphic here. All right, so I dragged and dropped it. When you first import an image, it's gonna give you a chance to resize it, and you can resize it any way you want. If you look up on the top right hand corner, or wherever you are moving it from, you'll see the dimensions. I don't suggest doing anything at this point. Just simply hit enter, and then that will accept the changes, because there's a much easier way of changing these dimensions. Now let me delete this. Now the other way is to either hit on Windows Control O, or on Mac hit Command O, and it will bring up this. It'll bring up the window dialog. Anyways, and then you can bring in your Tumblr graphic as you want. One reason I don't like doing this is that what happened here? Place embedded. I don't know why. They must have changed the hotkey. It used to just be Command O while you're in the artboard would open it up, and then Command O would otherwise. Anyways, so now you got to go to File, Place Embedded, and then there's that. So again, just simply hit enter. And there you go. Now, if I look over here, when I click on the actual image, I can see my dimensions are 9 by 25 by 825. For me, I know I want to change those dimensions. So I can't directly change anything right now because this is still linked to its old file. I basically want to unlink it to its file so that I can create changes to it, because if you try to do anything to it, it's going to ask you to do something called rasterize it. And that means that it's going to now become part of the image. It's going to be its own separate entity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to click on rasterize layer. And then now, if you see over here how this property, it went from all this stuff being grayed out to now I can change that. So now So for me, I know I like my tumblers at, 9 inches, 9.31 inches. So I can directly input that into here now. So it's a much easier way. And then instead of trying to drag, versus trying to drag in all that other stuff. Now, one thing I should mention is if you see this over here and it's in pixels, well, that's a quick fix. If you go up to File, or in Windows, I believe it's going to be File. Otherwise, on Mac, go to Photoshop, Preferences, Units and Rulers, and change your units right here to inches. Then that way, you'll see what you probably saw before was this. Change it to inches because or centimeters, millimeters, depending on, wherever. But that's how you change that. All right. So now I have this, and let's say, yep, I'll leave it at 825. All right. I've got my image imported. I've got my color settings correct. See, RGB 8-bit. I've got it exactly as I want it. So all I got to do is send it to Print Manager. Now, obviously, if you're on Windows, you'll just print directly, hit Command P, and print to Print Manager. If you're on a Mac, you don't have that option. Well, you have a option, and I'll show you two different ways that you can do this. My preferred way is to quick export as PNG. I will save it to my desktop. I'll minimize this, and then there's my untitled. You can name it whatever you want. I don't really bother with it. And then drag it and drop it into your smart folder. I have two smart folders since I do so many tumblers. So I'll just put it in my Sawgrass tumbler folder. Print Manager will pop up. Change your settings however you want. I know everybody likes to use this vivid mode. I actually usually turn this back to photographic because I change the colors in Photoshop if I need to, and I can show you how to do that as well. And then send it off to print. Easy day. Now I talked about changing the colors and stuff like that in here. If you want to change like how bright it is, what tone, or all these other things, make sure that over here on your layers, so making sure that you select the one that you want to change, and there's kind of like this little like yin yang kind of thing going on over here. There's all these different things that you can change it to. You can change it to black and white. You can do all these other things, but if you click here on the vibrance, now this vibrance filter will pop up, and you can change how colorful you want this thing. So that way you have more granular control of what color you want your print to be. Because if I remember correctly, it's very buried into Sawgrass's documentation, but I think the vibrancy is bumped up to 10. So then that's the equivalent. And so and then just do your file export. Make sure that you don't have, here we go. Make sure you don't have your color set to photographic, then because you don't want it to be vivid on top of vivid, because you controlled your own colors. Oh shoot! I guess while I'm here, I should also say because we made our canvas exactly as we want it, I suggest coming here to layout and doing preserve layout from designer. If Print Manager performs the layout, then you have to trim the white space and all these other things. I just prefer to do it because I set it up exactly the way that I want. The only caveat to this is, since Sawgrass printers do not do edge-to-edge printing, you have to be aware that there's going to be a 5mm area that you cannot print on, and it will not. If you do the preserve layout from designer, it will not tell you that that's the case, that it's going to be cut off. So just be aware of that. If you want to measure, if you want to measure, and I don't know, so normally, there it is. I don't know what happened right there. There's this ruler tool, and you can kind of see what I just did where I just was opening. If you come over here and you hold down whatever it is, it will bring up more, but more options. But right now I'm just concerned about the ruler tool. You can use the ruler tool to actually see how far something is. And since my ruler tool is in pixels, that doesn't really help me. So I have to go back through and change my settings. No, it is. Why was well, I guess call me a liar. Sorry about that, guys. And that's usually right here is going to be what your measurement is. Oh, duh. It is in inches. This L1 right here, length 1, that will be in inches. I just apparently forgot. So that will tell you. So you can come over here, change it back from units and rulers, change it to millimeters, and then you can see how many millimeters. So 3.5. So it's actually going to get cut off up here. I'm not too concerned about that anyways, but be aware of that. All right. So now I'm just going to go ahead and change this back to inches because that's my preferred. All right. So, I mean, and then the same thing will be like if you wanted to ever do a shirt graphic or whatever it may be, you can hit the delete button. That's how you clear things. So you can either hit delete or you can click on this trash can icon with whatever you have selected, but you can't delete the background. So if I had my shirt graphic, I just drag and drop. That's not. There we go. Same thing. If I wanted to change these dimensions, the best way to do it is to click on Rasterize Layer and change it here. You can also hit, if you wanted to bring up the slider thing where you wanted to change the perspective, you can hit either on Windows Control T or on Mac, hit Command T. That will bring up this slider right here. So, if you were trying to change like how it looked like aspect ratio wise, then you can do that through here, or you could have done that in the transform as well. But let's say that you start doing all this stuff and you realize that it looked better as it was before you, but you can't quite get there. You can always hit Command Z and it will bring it back to what it looked like before. You can just step all the way back, just hitting Command Z. Command Z is undo, or Control Z on Windows. All right. If you want to make something bigger than it normally is, Photoshop's probably the best way to do that because Photoshop actually has has a really good engine for this. Is all I'll say. So this image, when I imported it, it was only designed to be what was it 7.17 to 725. Now, if I wanted to make this any bigger. If you use like some other program, it might be pixelated. But luckily, Photoshop has an engine where it actually can make images bigger. I wouldn't go too big because you start getting really big, then Photoshop starts getting confused, and it can only do so much magic. But if you needed to make an image bigger, Photoshop is definitely the best place to do that. So, anyways, there is that. And actually, the shirt graphic that I should have pulled up, let me see here. So another thing that a lot of people want is being able to overlay patterns, especially over like the messy bun or like the family picture. Where is, oh, there it is. And I'm just going to do the messy bun. All right, so I bring in this. Oh, scratch discs are full. Oh, that's why. If you ever see that error that your scratch disk is full, it's usually because you have too many things open in your RAM, and it's causing the RAM. All right, let's try this again. There we go. I Premiere open at the same time. It's a big no-no. All right, I'm actually going to change this back to portrait, and I'm going to use my Command T because I'm not really too concerned about how big it is, but I want it to take all the full image, but I don't want to distort it while I'm doing that. So if you come over here, up here, and you see this width and this height, and you click on this link, it will now change both simultaneously. So then that way you're not having this really weird looking image. All right, so here's that. Now, a big request that a lot of people get are, I want, this removed, and I want a different pattern put in here. Let's say Bluey Mom Life, because I know I have that pattern. So this is going to be a real easy image to do so. Oh, sorry, someone was trying to call me. All right, so if I click, sorry, making sure that it wasn't, okay, sorry about that. All right, so over here on my tool panel, I'm going to use something called the Magic Wand tool. What the Magic Wand tool does is that it will select similar colors or the color that I want it to be. Since this image is just two colors, it's going to be very easy. So I click on this, and now if you see where I select, I have what's called the marching ants down in here. And let me zoom in so I can show you. See these little marching ants? Now, if you see, I can only click on one area at a time. Now there's two ways of actually being able to select all of it. You can hold down the shift button, and now you can see where the magic tool turned into like a plus sign, and start clicking all these little areas in here. And there you go. You have the areas that you want to modify selected. And it looks like, oh no, that's just my eyes deceiving me. There is another way, since this image is purely just black and pink, I can come up here and unclick this contiguous thing, this little checkbox. And what that's going to do is once I click on this, it's going to select everything in the image that is that color. Since I'm only concerned with what's pink, that's going to work here. But be aware, like if you're trying to modify some other image and it has, it's very colorful and all this other stuff, and you click on that, It's going to select everything that is somewhat closer to that. And you can change your tolerance level. So your tolerance up here is a slider. It's like a sliding scale of how similar of the color do you want it to select to what you're selecting. So basically, how many shades of pink do you want me to go up to? Hopefully that wasn't too confusing when I said that. But anyways, so you select that, and of course, Becca, I'm glad you're actually getting something out of this. So select that, and now I can do one of two things. I can just leave it as it is, or I can hit delete. Oh, it's not directly editable, so I needed to rasterize it. Now that I've rasterized it, now I can delete it. And then you can overlay whatever image you want or whatever pattern you want. Okay, so first, in order to do that, we need a pattern. So you can find them throughout the internet. Make sure that they're what's called a seamless pattern. And I can show you how in Photoshop to verify that it's a seamless pattern. So let me find one of my patterns here. Let me close this. Yeah, I said I was going to do bluey, so we'll do bluey. All right, so I have this image. I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to open with Adobe Photoshop. All right, so here is, let's say this is the pattern that I want to input in here. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to verify that this is actually a seamless file, because if it's not going to work out. So I'm going to click on this view right here, and I'm going to go to pattern preview. Just select OK. And now I can see, so I can see this blue outline right here. That's what is the actual images, and then the rest of it showing how it's repeating throughout. This view is also good for if you're trying to make your own seamless pattern, for you to be able to see, like, am I on the right track or not? All right, so I'm going to get out of this view by going back up to view and just clicking pattern preview. All right, so one other thing to open is come out here to window and go to patterns. It will normally open up over here, but just come over here and put it wherever you want. I like it in there. You can actually put it in here as well if you want it to be pop out like that, but I like it where I can actually get to it because I use patterns quite a bit. So now I have this image. All I'm going to do is just click this plus button, give it a name, and boom, it's in my patterns. So now with this all still selected, you can still see the marching ants around here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it right on top. And now you can see that this pattern is in this little area. So, but obviously that's not a very good, look. Like, it needs to be smaller. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to set my scaling to, say, 25%. That's probably about good. And from here also, while you have this open, you can click on the pattern itself and drag it around to, whatever you want it to be. So if I wanted to make sure that I had as much of the family in view while I had this open, you can do that there. You can change the angle if for some reason you needed them to, like, be upside down or whatever. That's where you would do that. Once you click OK, you'll go back to the regular editing, and you can always come back in and redo that. All right, so now I need to get rid of this mom life. So I'm going to make sure that I have this selected right here, and I'm going to make sure that I'm just going to use my brush tool. You can also use the erase tool, but the only thing the erase tool does is set it to whatever this background color is. So I'm going to press B. It's going to bring up this brush tool. I am going to select the color white. So I'm going to click on here. This is your foreground and this is your background color. And then just drag this all the way up to white to the top left corner. Bottom left corner is pure black. And then here's, all your other sliders. But I'm going to use this like an eraser, and I'm going to color right over that. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I need to place my text down there. So I'm going to press on this text right here. And if you look in here, there's also vertical type and horizontal and type mask. This type mask is also good because it'll create the marching ants for you, and you can overlay a pattern, you can color in the way you want to, do all these other things. But to keep it simple right now, we're going to do the horizontal type tool. And then I'm going to, I forgot to change this color to black, but you can still always change it. So you can come up here, I'm going to change it to black. So this is where you would, if you have already created the text, this is where you're going to change everything about the text, including this color right here. This is where you change your alignment, the size, and the font. I highly discourage anybody from ever clicking on this 3D tool. It is actually, Photoshop is actually, or Adobe's working to take this out because it is awful. It is a very awful tool. And you will regret it because it will completely mess up your layout and everything. So try not to click on this. I promise you there's nothing interesting in this. All right. Now I've got that over. So you're going to select your font that you want. Let's just say that I'm going to use this one. And then I'm just going to, without changing the size or anything, I'm just going to do hashtag Bluey Mom. And then what I'm going to do, once I'm done with it, I'm going to click on this checkbox. Okay. And then I'm going to use this. This is your move tool. This is how you move things around on your canvas. I'm going to get it to about where I want to. All right. Zoom out on my. Now, obviously that's too small, but what I'm going to do is I can actually transform this. So I'm going to hit Command T, or if you're on a Windows, Control T. I'm going to drag it and make it as big as I want. Hit Enter or that, and then there you go. If you wanted to edit this again with your command tool, just double click on it, and then you can still change whatever it is you want. Change the font. If you're going to change the font, you're actually going to have to select what you want and then change it that way. So yeah, I'm just going to stick with this because why not? All right. Let me hit. And then if I wanted to change the colors again, I come down and my little yin yang changed from down here to up here. It's not really yin yang, but oh, nope, I am wrong about that one. Oh, it's because I rasterized it. All right. So anyways, doesn't matter. And then now I can print it off and export it or do whatever I want with it. And then that's how you do that. Now, if you needed to do some more let's see here. Something more intensive. So I'm going to create a new. No, don't save. Don't save. So I'm going to make a new document here. 8.5 by 11. All my settings are great. And let's say I have this image. And let's say for some reason I wanted to change, I wanted to put a pattern over Betty's shirt. Um, I don't know why you'd want to do it, but this is the first graphic I grabbed. So we can use our magic tool. I'm going to make sure I have contiguous selected, and I'm going to click on it, and you can see that it's kind of struggling picking up what I want. And so I can go and I can hit my shift and keep trying to select where I got it, and it's going to try to adapt and try to figure out what you're doing. And actually, it did a pretty good job, considering that it's this straight green. And it's missing some places. Yeah, shockingly, this actually did pretty good. Normally, it'll struggle with that, and if I needed to, like let's say it's selecting not enough or selecting too much, I can change this tolerance and I can bump it up to 75 and hopefully get more of this as I'm doing this. And you can see how it selected more, but let's say it's not selecting enough, or I mean, it's selecting too much, then I can bump it down to like 25 and it's not going to, be as brave in its selection. So actually 75 worked pretty well for me. And but you can see there's like inherent problems with doing this, but whatever. Let's say that we got what we wanted. Oh, see, it started selecting over here. If you want to deselect what you have, you can just hit Control D or Command D on a Mac, and that will all go away. So I'm gonna put this back to 50. I'm actually gonna try to see if I can get this. Not bad. Whatever. All right, and then I have my pattern. Drag over my pattern, and yay, she's now wearing a bluey shirt, because I'm sure she would have loved that. But as you can see, it looks pretty horrible. The image is, it doesn't account for like the creases. All you literally see is just a pattern overlay. And there's ways of like trying to change that. There's something called blending options, where if you look at this is normal. If you click on that and you kind of, so if you come in here and multiply, blend it in a little bit better on that. So now it kind of just looks like she's wearing a green shirt with bluey on it. If that's what you wanted to do, then there you go. That's how you kind of do it. And you can mess around with all of these little blending options to actually get it to kind of match up in there. 99% of the time when you're trying to do stuff like this, multiply is what you want. And I know I'm kind of jumping around all over the place, so I'm sorry. But now, let's say that I was absolutely struggling with this and I could not get it. Let me delete this. There you go. Oops. No, I don't want to delete that one. All right. Let's say I was having, it just wasn't working out. So that's where something called the pen tool comes in. And I don't know why it's called a pen tool. It's always been called a pen tool since as far back as I can remember, but it doesn't actually mark anything. It is how you draw things around or how you select things in a very granular way. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to go around and start clicking all around this. So here I am in my navigator, and I'm going to zoom in, and I literally will start clicking. And I'm, in all reality, I'll be super zoomed in to where I see the actual pixels themselves, and you can see how everything just turned into boxes. You are now seeing the individual pixels. And you can see that I'm a little dot on this right here. So I might not be that zoomed in, but so between my navigator and this, I'm going to go around and I'm going to select, and I'm going to try to do this very quickly because I don't want to, sorry about that, waste anybody's time. But it's going to be do this. And normally, if I'm doing something like this, I will probably spend an hour trying to get all the, using little amount and just being very carefully, but I'm just trying to be quick here. There we go. Keep going. Try not to get any of Blanche's. Not Blanche. I should know my folder a little bit better than that. But all right. You know what? Betty White probably would have liked a blue shirt because she was a big animal lover. So I guess it ends up being kind of fitting. All right, so I'm going to keep on here. You can see how daunting of a task this can be. So if you're ever doing this for somebody, make sure you chart your time appropriately. That's the quickest way to get burnt out on doing stuff like this, is doing all this for a, you know, a one-time $15 t-shirt. All right. Almost. All right, so now I can see where my original point is. So I can click on that, and then now I have joined up everything. You can see how everything is now turned into a solid blue line. So if I right click on this, or right click the actual line, and then I click on make selection, this thing's going to pop up where the feather radius and all this other stuff. Feather radius is how much you want it to come from what you selected, how much you wanted to go in or out from there. If you took your time and you actually selected what you want to, just leave it at 0. Make sure new selection. If you had other things that were selected that you can add to selection or whatever it is that you wanted to do, just click OK. And now you can see it's turned into the marching ants. So there you go. And then, you know, do whatever it is that you needed to do. And if you saw that, you know, let's say I wanted to actually change the color of this, it's going to be kind of hard to do without getting into super detail, but I can click on this right here. That's going to create a whole new layer. So that way I can make a change without affecting this. And as long as this layer, as you can see how I can drag and drop it, this layer stays on top, it's going to, you know, what I'm going to be able to see whatever it is. So I'll grab my brush, say I choose this red, and because only this area is selected, when I go over it, it's only going to cover that selection right there. And then again, I can use my multiply or my blending options to then change the color of our shirt. I can hit Command D, and there you go. I can see where I missed areas and stuff like that. But like I said, I would if I was doing this normally, I would take a lot more time in doing so. And that's pretty much it as far as I'm going to get into for this. That should be able to get you through 90% of your projects that you want to do. If you want more training, especially you want to get into the more creative side, I'll share a website with you that I absolutely love for just about everything. And that is, if you haven't heard it, is Udemy. And Udemy, if you wanted to learn anything, well, not anything, but almost anything computer related, you can do it here. And this is basically like the Etsy for teachers. So if I go in here and I type in Photoshop, I can find all these Photoshop classes. Now, some people would probably just had a heart attack from seeing this number up here. Don't, these go on sale on the regular. I actually took this one right here, this adult ultimate Adobe Photoshop training for beginner to pro 2022 as like a refresher to see what was changed. This was actually a great course. I would not pay $150 for it. If you add this to, so you create an account and you add this to your wish list by clicking on this, it will tell you when it goes on sale. And I'm willing to, and I've seen courses that went from $150 down to $10. You can obviously there's also YouTube, but these tend to be a lot more structured. They have examples that you work with. This guy actually has a Discord, which is like a chat program. If you're familiar with that, that you can start asking questions, and he's actually like super responsive on that. And there's also the other thing. So if you ever want to learn Illustrator, or you want to learn, say you didn't want to learn Photoshop at all, you want to learn Affinity, you can do that in here. People advertise all the time where these, master classes. And normally when I see those on Facebook, and I actually like watched a few, I wasn't too impressed, especially when, I was charged $50 and I was like, this is terrible. So you can look up Affinity Designer and find a class. And like I said, it's the beginning of the year, so they're not really going to be on sale, but they go on sale regularly. But anyways, that's where I would steer you to go next if you wanted to do more with Photoshop or any other design program at that. So there's no questions. I think I will end the live stream there. And of course, so at the beginning of the live stream, I showed the Adobe website, but here I'll show it again because I know there was a lot of people that weren't on there. So in order to get Photoshop, you have to pay a subscription cost. That subscription cost varies. So if you come to adobe.com and you go to creative design and you click on Photoshop, it's going to say $21 a month, which is a ridiculous price. Don't ever pay that. Best thing to do is go to creative, go to this thing over here. It says for photographers. And this gets you Photoshop and Lightroom. So if you ever want to do photography, Lightroom is an absolute fantastic program for that. But you get both for $10 a month. So pay that. That's as much, and you get a 7-day free trial. So you can use your free trial, try to mess around with the stuff that I taught here, and see if Photoshop is better for you, or maybe you just wanted to go back to Silhouette Studio. That's fine too. But I highly recommend going to something like that. Another one, which honestly is almost just as good, and the concepts I taught in here are pretty much going to be the same, is Affinity. They don't charge a subscription cost. They just charge a one-time fee. So you can get Affinity Designer for $55, and then that's you outright own it. The only problem with it is that it's not as powerful as Photoshop, and whenever a new version of Affinity Designer were to ever come out, they're not obligated to then give it to you. So versus with Photoshop, you will always have the updated version because the 2022 version just came out. What is it? Last or at the beginning of the month. I got that for free. and it actually did bring some new stuff to it. But anyways, the whole point is that no matter what, I will always have the most up-to-date version, paying that $10 a month. But also with Affinity, especially around Black Friday, these will go on sale for like half off. So you can get both of these, Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer, for 25 bucks, or for 50 bucks, or just one or the other for 25. So it just depends on whatever you want. Um, if you decide to go the Affinity route, I would look up other classes, because I'm not really too familiar with Affinity, because I don't really like it. But it is great that it's a super cheap price. And then that's it. All right. So if you have any other questions, of course, reach out to the Sawgrass community group. I'm always on there. I'm always trying to answer questions as I can. And if even if it's a Photoshop question or whatever it may be, I will try to help you. So feel free to ask. And thank you for watching.